Welcome on in, guys. Tobin here with you, and thanks for checking out the channel. Hope you're doing well out there, and if you guys could subscribe, that'd be great, and appreciate you stopping by. So Chris Quinn is reportedly a finalist for the Phoenix Suns head coaching job. That was reported by a couple of outlets. It's been reported out there by Arizona Central, by Gambo out in Phoenix, said from 98.7, and it was said down to 3 candidates. It's not accurate. It's 4. Chris Quinn, Johnny Bryant, and Jordan Ott are amongst the finalists. I can confirm through various sources are in the final 4. Jordan Ott, I believe, I would guess he's a Cavaliers assistant. I would guess he's the favorite because they seem like they have a whole Michigan State thing they're trying to build over there, a la Knicks with Villanova. That's going to become like the chic NBA thing. And Chris Quinn went to Notre Dame. And I don't know if that might have him out in the cold. But obviously Chris Quinn did make a good impression on these things. I believe they're now going to like in-person final interviews. So we'll see. This may be all for naught when I'm doing this. But it is going to be interesting with the Miami Heat and what they're going to do with that coaching vacancy. Because I do think very highly of a lot of those guys. I know it's kind of the thought right now from everybody that they need somebody from the outside to come in and clean things up in Heatland and help out Erik Spoelstra and give him another voice. And I'm not saying those opinions are wrong, but I also think that the bigger issue on the team is the offensive talent, not necessarily the coaching. I think that Erik Spoelstra has shown himself to be pretty innovative, though I do think he is a defense first guy because he believes and harbors in the tough things. And even with his own team, it's like if they do the right thing on defense, going and doing what they want on offense has been, one of the rewards that they do. They just got to go defend their ass off. But this is a guy hardened from old school Pat Riley that he wants to go out there and defend well. But I did wonder, like, all right, outside of the obvious of like promoting Caron Butler, which I would be happy for. Caron would deserve it. I think that he's great. Malik Allen's done a bang-up job. I think a lot of these guys have done a good job of defending. These guys, one of the things I like about them, they've all gotten kind of in the weeds of developing these guys. They'll take on the scout teams themselves. Like the Heat coaching staff, while people may find it a little quaint and hokey that the Miami Heat do this, there's something I dig about that. I like the idea that Wayne Ellington comes back and tries to, get his coaching career off the ground with the Miami Heat. Anthony Carter, for the many years that he was here before he ends up in Memphis, which, listen, man, AC, say what you got to say to, Jada, make a stink. That's all I'm saying, dude. But if he was to go out, I was trying to really think, because, like, where would he go outside the family to bring somebody in? And I had ideas, none of them great. But these are the names that are coming back. Obviously, there's Michael Malone, who is freshly fired from the Denver Nuggets. Seemed like he got a little petty. He's doing TV work. I don't know like how that would vibe with Erik Spoelstra as far as it's concerned, just because, that's a guy that they've just competed for championships. Does Michael Malone lend anything supportive? Why is he taking this job next to Erik Spoelstra? Does he kind of feel like it's, is he looking and waiting for Erik Spoelstra to be burned out? Like, it's not like I would hate it. I think bringing somebody of Michael Malone's credentials in doesn't feel like it could hurt right now. But I will say, the one thing with Michael Malone for the back stories of Denver, and one of the reasons that he got fired and seemed to have a lot of infighting with the GM, Calvin Booth, I forget what the guy's name was. The GM who got fired is the GM wanted Michael Malone to play young guys. Michael Malone didn't want to play young guys. And so for the Heat fan who gets frustrated because Erik Spoelstra doesn't give young guys a chance, I think doubling down and bringing a guy like Michael Malone in with that, I don't necessarily know is going to fill the void. So just keep that in mind. Then I thought, like, Frank Vogel, like, is that a place where they go? Like, I don't think of Frank Vogel as, like, this innovator who everyone's going, solid coach, solid coach, even though I've relentlessly made fun of him and called him Frank Hole for the Pacers exits and how he looked in the Magic days. So is that a place where the Miami Heat could go? This was one I thought of, and I don't even know if I like the idea. I think part of me kind of hates the idea, but it's an idea. The Clippers got a lot of credit this year for bringing in a defensive guru, if you will, former broadcaster, right-hand man to Ty Lue, a little older than Ty Lue, but I think somebody Ty Lue respects. And that was Jeff Van Gundy. And I thought to myself, okay, what if the Miami Heat went in a Van Gundy direction, and though he hasn't had the greatest coaching resume as of late, he is a guy I think Erik Spoelstra greatly respects, I would imagine. This is kind of the guy who told Erik Spoelstra he could be a head coach. Would it be crazy for the Miami Heat to take a spin around the old Stan Van Gundy block and put him on the bench with Erik Spoelstra? Just a little bit of a... Because here's the thing with Stan Van Gundy. Yes, everybody would say, well, Tobes, isn't he a Heat guy? Like, wouldn't that go in the face of, like, fresh... Yes and no. Because while Stan Van Gundy is a Heat guy and is a bit of an Erik Spoelstra mentor, I do think he does bring in some fresh eyes. He's obviously been broadcasting all of the games nationally. He hasn't always had the highest opinion of the Heat's roster. You know, in fact, I've mocked him for a lot of like the things that he said about the Heat roster, you know, where he's like, oh, the Heat aren't in the same ballpark as like Philadelphia, blah, blah, blah. So I actually think it would be kind of interesting to have a voice of somebody who doesn't necessarily love all the tools that the Heat have. And I think you're kind of bringing in a fresh set of eyes, but a set of eyes that I think Erik Spoelstra would really trust. Then you go to the offensive thing. And like the last thing I can really go with this is one, well, he built a pretty good offense with the 2009, 2010 Magic that went to the finals, right? Like that was a team that was top 7 in offense, made it to the finals, was surrounded Dwight Howard with a lot of shooters, kind of a modern-ish way of thinking. Not a lot of like super awesome names, but really good guys. And then, of course, Dwight Howard, a Hall of Famer. So you have that. The last time that Stan Van Gundy coached was in the 2021 season. So that would have been the post-COVID New Orleans Pelicans. That team finished 31-41. Not great. But that team that year, that Pelicans team, finished finished 9th in points per game for a team that was 10 games under. And that was Zion's, what was it? That was Zion's second season. How many games did he play that year? 20. So he played 61 games. Got 61 games out of Zion Williamson. Zion averaged 27 points a game that year. So, you know, it's not like Stan. Now it was an unceremonious and didn't have the best relationship with him. I don't think it does anything great for like recruiting wise, especially if you wanted Zion on the team. But I was like, all right, let's really think about this. Who is somebody that could help, that Spo would trust, but is a little bit of outside of the voice? Because I think if anybody who is a Heat guy, because I'll tell you what, Stan Van Gundy comes to these Heat games, right? This dude holds court. Obviously, Caron Butler has a lot of love for him too. Loves Stan Van Gundy. Loves Stan Van Gundy. So I don't feel like if you were going to make a move to bring somebody in and you didn't promote anybody, or even if you moved up, if let's say Chris Quinn gets the job, even if Caron Butler like moved up and you had Stan on the staff, but like, hey, he fits in perfectly harmoniously with everybody, but also is like a little bit of this is the limitations I see on Bam. These are the limitations I see on Tyler. These are this. What have you thought of this? And then somebody that Spo could really have as a sounding board, but also can coach a little bit. Like, I think as a coach, everybody respects. I think everybody looks at Stan Van Gundy and is like, that guy's a respectful coach. And especially if you're not asking him to be the head coach to run things, where, I think Stan has said this on Levitt, like he can get run ragged into a little bit. So maybe you have Spo and you have Stan. Maybe it's like two guys that are too miserable around each other because they are just so all in on coaching. But that was my off the wall one. I was like, all right, everyone's going to say Michael Malone. Everyone's going to say Frank Hole. Fizdale. Could a Fizdale reunion be on the horizon? Could that happen? Yeah, maybe. I don't know. Who would hate it, right? Like, who would hate having David Fizdale? You'd love having David Fizdale around. But that, to me, I was like, why don't take Van Gundy seemed to work out. One Van Gundy seemed to work out in L.A. Maybe a Stan Van Gundy Miami reunion would be something. I think he lives in Florida. I don't think this is a crazy trek for him. So I don't know. I just, this isn't really a hot take. This isn't something I definitely want to happen. This was just one of those, trying this pair of shoes, walking around the store a little, see how it feels, Heat fans. I'm just like, it was maybe that's the old answer, old SVG, bringing him into the fold. I'm telling you though, he comes to these Heat games, dude. He is when he's broadcasting for TNT. That dude is hobnobbing. He's holding court with everybody of the Heat brass, coaches, staff. They love them some Stan Van Gundy. I was like, I think Stan Van Gundy's got a little bit of sauce in him when it comes to coaching the offense. Maybe that's you're always looking for new voices, but maybe there's some freshness in an honest, older voice that Erik Spoelstra would respect. So if Chris Quinn gets the job, and that's, I wish Chris Quinn the best. I don't know if that he will, because it does feel like that Michigan State thing may be a thing. So this may all be for nothing. But I was like, all right, SVG?